The auditorium was glowing under warm golden lights as hundreds of people whispered among themselves, waiting for the next performer. The AGT stage, massive screens, towering spotlights, the iconic red buzzers, felt like a universe of its own. In this universe, dreams could be born, or crushed. Backstage, 20-year-old Marco Dela Cruz stood with his hands trembling slightly, clutching the microphone as though it were his lifeline. His heart thudded louder than the audience's murmurs. A staff member gently tapped his shoulder. "Marco, you're next." His stomach flipped. He whispered, "Kaya ko, too, I can do this." He had come all the way from Cebu, Philippines, chasing a dream people had mocked him for. A Filipino singing Elvis. Impossible. He had heard that sentence his whole life. But he believed otherwise. As he stepped onto the polished stage, the lights hit him so strongly that for a second, everything blurred. He blinked twice, forcing himself to focus. The judges' table came into view, Howie smiling warmly, Sophia waving lightly, Heidi giving him a bright nod, and Simon, observing him with that sharp, unreadable stare. The studio fell silent. Simon leaned forward. "Hello. What's your name?" "My name is Marco Dela Cruz," he said, his voice soft but steady. "And what will you be doing for us today?" Simon asked. Marco swallowed. "I'll be singing Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis Presley." The moment the name, Elvis, left his lips, the audience made small noises, surprised, curious, skeptical. Even the judges shared quick glances. Elvis was sacred territory. Few dared to touch his songs, even fewer succeeded. Simon raised an eyebrow. "That's a big song. Why Elvis?" Marco breathed in deeply, remembering the nights he spent singing to his father's old vinyl records. "Because Elvis inspired me, his voice made me believe singing can touch souls. Today, I want to do that, maybe in my own little way." Simon didn't smile, but something softened in his expression. "All right, let's hear it." The track began, gentle piano chords floating through the vast room. Marco closed his eyes for a second. Then he sang the first note. It didn't just sound like Elvis, it felt like Elvis had stepped into the room. A warm, velvety tone poured out of him, rich, steady, unbelievably controlled. The audience froze. A woman in the front row gasped loudly. Sophia's eyes instantly widened. Heidi covered her mouth, whispering, "Wow," under her breath. Simon, the man who'd heard the world's greatest voices, actually blinked and leaned in closer. Marco's voice traveled smoothly, effortlessly, hitting each phrase with elegance. Yet, he wasn't just copying Elvis, he was coloring the song with a Filipino soul, a tender emotional depth that made his version feel heartbreakingly pure. By the first chorus, the atmosphere shifted. People rose to their feet. Cameras zoomed in. Producers backstage rushed closer to the monitors, whispering, "Who is this kid?" Marco opened his eyes finally and saw the audience standing, thousands of eyes locked on him. It didn't scare him anymore. It strengthened him. He let the next verse unfold with a softer vibrato, then lifted the final lines with a power that filled every inch of the studio. His last note lingered in the air like a prayer. Silence. For a few seconds, not a single soul moved. And then, a thunderstorm of claps, screams, cheers. Every judge stood, even Simon. Marco's lips trembled. This wasn't applause. It was acceptance. It was validation of every difficult night, every time people laughed at him, every promise he made to himself. Heidi placed a hand on her heart. That was magical. Absolutely magical. Howie shook his head in disbelief. You didn't just sing Elvis, you embodied him. And still, kept your own heart in it. That's talent we can't teach. Sophia leaned toward the mic. Your voice, ay Dios mío, it's so pure, so golden. You brought goosebumps to everyone. Marco's eyes drifted to Simon. The only opinion that had terrified him. Simon didn't speak at first. He simply stared at Marco as if trying to make sense of what had just happened. Finally, he let out a breath and said, "Marco, I've heard hundreds of Elvis covers. Thousands, maybe." He paused. But from the very first note, I knew we were witnessing something extraordinary. Marco covered his mouth, his tears threatening to fall. You have a gift, Simon continued. Not just a good voice, you have a rare voice. One that makes the whole room stop breathing. One that makes people feel something. The crowd screamed in agreement. And you know what? Simon added, standing slowly. He glanced at the golden buzzer. The audience went wild even before he touched it. Marco shook his head, overwhelmed, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. Simon slammed the button. Golden confetti exploded into the air, raining down like shimmering stars. Marco fell to his knees, crying into his hands as the music swelled. The judges ran to him, giving him hugs. Simon reached him last, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You deserve this," he said softly. "Welcome to your new life." Backstage, the celebration continued. Marco's mother rushed to him, hugging him tightly. "Anik, you did it. You made us so proud," she cried. Marco sobbed into her arms. "Ma, I saw the audience stand. I saw Simon smile. I can't believe it." Producers gathered around him. "That first note. Pure magic," one said. "You're going viral tonight," another added excitedly. "People are going to cry watching your audition." Marco wiped his tears, still hardly believing the day had happened. "For years," he whispered, "people told me I wasn't good enough, that Elvis was too big, that my dreams were too big." He looked down at the handful of golden confetti still stuck to his palm. "But today, I proved that dreams don't care where you come from. They only care how much your heart burns for them." A slow-motion replay on the backstage monitor showed Marco singing, confetti drifting like golden angels around him, Simon smiling proudly. Marco stared at the screen, a small smile forming. This wasn't just an audition. It was the beginning of a legend.